Hi there, everybody. I'm Jeff Mayers from WizPolitics.com here with another one of our virtual luncheon events. And it's with Governor Tony Evers. And we'll be getting back to the governor real soon, but I got to do some housework here. So we're going to thank our sponsors, of course. We couldn't do without you. These are sponsors of our Madison Club series. By the time we get the hang of all these virtual events, we'll start doing them at the Madison Club again. And maybe we can do that in the latter part of this year. But I want to thank our sponsors, the Wisconsin Hospital Association, AARP Wisconsin, XL Energy, Walmart, American Family Insurance, and Hush Blackwell. So thank you very much, sponsors. I also want to talk about our upcoming events. We have another one on Thursday with the Democratic legislative leaders, Thursday during the lunch hour. Then on March 11th, in cooperation with the Milwaukee Press Club, we're going to have Congresswoman Gwen Moore, Democrat of Milwaukee, member of the House Ways and Means Committee. On March 25th, WizBusiness.com is going to do an event with leaders in the state hospitality industry to talk about how they have been coping with COVID. And then on April 15th, we have a lunch hour event scheduled with Senate Majority Leader Devin LeMahieu. But now, today, we're talking with Governor Tony Evers. Welcome, Governor.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going today?
It's going okay. Thank you very much for joining us. Great. So in preparing for this, it occurred to me that we've been a year into this crisis, and I've been we've been keeping a blow-by-blow every day at our COVID timeline, and you can find that at wizpolitics.com, everybody. And if you scroll back, you'll see that March is when things started to develop, so to speak. So, on March 12th, you declared a public health emergency, and on March 13th, you closed the state schools, and things unfolded from there. When did it occur to you that, whoa, this is a bad thing that's happening?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's been an action-packed year, and it's been difficult for everybody. Just setting the politics aside, it's been difficult on every single Wisconsinite, every single person in the United States. So I would say towards the end of February, clearly, I think we saw that it was spreading from both coasts, actually across the nation. But it was clear after we got into March that this is a thing, and it's an important thing. And at that point in time, states all around us were going to a different place as far as making sure that people are safe and safer at home. And we did that on March 12th, and certainly there was support for that at the time. We identified who was an essential worker and all those things, but I can remember, and it just shows you how things have changed. I remember at one point in time we had 60 people in the state of Wisconsin who were identified having COVID-19, and I thought, okay, this is a big deal. This is going to be a big deal in the state of Wisconsin. And here we are, a year later, and we have 500 to 600 a day, and we think we're plateauing and going down. So you think of, from the very first, when we went into kind of double digits, and like I said, 66, and I remember I think we're having a press conference that day, and that was a big number, and they got bigger, but it was about that time where it is clear that we were, as a country, going to have to do business a little differently than we had before.
Yeah, and it was kind of a go it alone thing. I mean, there was some interstate cooperation, and yes, a governor could call a federal agency or whatever, but there was a kind of a 50-state strategy, if you will. I don't know. If you were to think about how it could have unfolded differently, at that time we were trying to flatten the curve, right? That didn't turn out to happen. I mean, how would you have? What could have happened better at that point to mitigate where we are even now,
Yeah,
which is better than we were in the fall.
exactly. Yeah, the fall was horrible for Wisconsin, but the if I had a magic wand, and we've had, or I saw a University of Wisconsin-Madison study on how safer at home did save lives, and I believe that. From my vantage point, I want to look at it from kind of a national issue rather, and in addition, a state issue. But as a national issue, I can remember dramatically that at that time the president was talking about it's going to be done by Easter. Churches will be full on Easter, and all this stuff about Easter. And I looked at it, and nobody believed that. And so here we had Washington D.C. taking a hands-off and also a very minimalist point of view. And then we had us in the state were doing the safer at home, and I felt it was in our best interest to re-up that to the end of May. If it would have been a wholly different world, we would have had consistent leadership at the national level, talking about following the science and all the things that we know are important, and it left it up to individual governors to kind of make do. And then obviously in our state, I re-upped the safer at home and went to court, and it was a political mess and a mess for the state. I felt we were in a good place. We were prepared to not redo it at the end of May because we had made some progress and slowly open up the economy in a very thoughtful way, and working with businesses across the state to do that. Then suddenly everything was wide open, and we spent a lot of time fighting in court and fighting in primarily court to make sure that our state was safe.
What was a personal low point for you where you went like, oh boy?
Well, it was in November, actually, just before the election, when things where we were at the worst, if not the worst state in the nation as far as, and we were getting these notices every week. All the governors were from the government, and those maps on our state were all red, and that red didn't indicate a Republican red. It was red with people all in every county suffering from this virus, and so that was a very scary time. It was at the same time where I was getting a lot of pushback about them, wearing the mask and wanting, we wanted to really take care of the issue of making sure people didn't gather in large groups, and some really basic things that we kept getting pushback at. But, at the end of the day, we were able to kind of get through that hump, and I think people did take it seriously at that time, and we had better cooperation around at least face masking, and we got through that. But I would say November, when Wisconsin was leading the state in deaths and the number of per capita and the number of people per capita, that was not a good time.
Certainly, there's been a lot of money quarterbacking on you and others in leadership positions, from the top on down. I mean, do you have any regrets? Something you would have done differently, like, when you did closing big box, not closing small stores, but not big box stores, or I mean, is there anything like that you would do differently?
Well, given the hand we are dealt by the federal government, no, I wouldn't have done. I mean, clearly, when we're closing small stores and big boxes were open, they had an easier way to mitigate and keep people socially distant, whereas small stores obviously can't because they're smaller. But I also know that there's going to be some inconsistencies there because some big boxes sell food. So people are going to be able to go to a big box to get food and not to a corner grocery store. But we're following the science at every step of the way. I have, do I wish that we would have been fighting around the issue of masks? Yes, but that became a foregone conclusion early on when we saw the minimization of the effectiveness of that and not following the science from the national situation, national Republicans, Donald Trump in particular, and that was parroted across the country, including Wisconsin. That still is the one of the reasons I'm convinced that it became such a long, drawn out affair, is that people didn't frankly believe that it was a thing, and it was a thing.
Okay, so now things are better. Vaccines are out there, and more people are eligible, but there doesn't seem to be enough supply.
Yeah.
What's the issue there, do you think?
Well, certainly the issue is that just like any kind of supply chain, and you're starting up a new product, whether it's a vaccine or something else, you get this approval from the federal government and the CDC to do a vaccine, and at our end, as far as delivering that, we have plenty of people that want to be vaccinated. We've got plenty of people doing the vaccination. So we look back to Pfizer and Moderna starting up their production, and anytime if you're making a widget, you have to get the supplies to make that widget. You have to make sure all those pieces are in place, and it just doesn't. The cadence on that just doesn't happen overnight, and so that's where we're at right now. In the present situation, I was just on a phone call this morning where we're talking about that with folks at the federal government. We're going to be consistently seeing that increase, and we're going to consistently seeing that the new Johnson & Johnson piece is going to take place, but slowly over time. They've only got a couple million doses, and across the country, that's not much. We get 1.5% to 2% of that. And so we're going to be slowly increasing. And if, people have to be patient. I know that's almost impossible. And, frankly, if anybody assumed that we were going to vaccinate every teacher in the state of Wisconsin on the first day, on March 1st, that was probably a wrong assumption. It's just going to take time to get through it. And I think people have been very patient. I understand that it can be frustrating for folks, but we are slowly getting more and more. We are at frankly a point, a month ago, where we needed triple the amount if we wanted as a state to actually get to a point this summer where we're getting close to herd immunity. But we're getting there, and the Biden administration has been very good about this, and they're working hard. And I know people are going to say that's a political statement, but that's a fact. That they're working with us. They're working with the people that are getting the vaccine, and we're good. And people need to understand that when their group is called, that doesn't mean that can happen all in one day. It will happen. I can guarantee you that. But we need more. And as I think the president is going to announce today, and I don't think it's happened yet, but that one of the companies, I can't remember if it's Moderna or Pfizer, will be working with Merck and to help produce more vaccine under.
Yeah, I think Johnson & Johnson and Merck are going to be working together.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, and that'll make a huge difference, and that'll make a huge immediate difference. So we're getting there, and I've frankly been pleased with the way we're going. We continue to be number one in the Big Ten, in the Midwest, as it relates to the percentage of people being vaccinated, and we're in the top 10 for sure in the country. So we're getting shots in the arm. It's just a matter of how many shots we have to put in arms.
Yeah, you mentioned the teachers and the March 1 yesterday. Teachers are eligible, and I just saw some national stats where 72% nationwide of kids districts are in person or a hybrid, and in Wisconsin it's about 50%. And part of that seems to be the bigger districts, like Madison. They're due to go back on March 9th, start going back, and teachers and staff are saying, hey, we want to be vaccinated first. So should teachers and staff be vaccinated before they go back to school? Is that an imperative?
Well, it's not according to the CDC, and I know my teacher friends may disagree with me, but CDC says it's not imperative that people can go back as long as other mitigating factors are in place. And, social distancing, making sure kids are wearing masks, making sure everybody's wearing a mask, the ventilation and things like that. So it is not a prerequisite to have every teacher vaccinated. If it can be done, should it be done? Of course, but it's not a mandate. So I know we've had different districts all across the state. I know 50%. That's probably the total number of students that our school districts. We've had school districts all across the state that have been conducting school in person, except for maybe at a point in time where they needed to go virtual because they had a number of people being sick. But actually, as you know, I've let the locals take care of that because it's not the state's position to determine whether something can be mitigated or not. Masks, yeah, absolutely. But if you have a small school district where you can socially distant and people are 6 feet apart and everything's cool, then those people went into session. Different school districts have different capabilities to mitigate. So I've trusted the leadership and frankly the teachers in those districts to make that decision, and they'll continue to do that. I'm happy that almost all districts, if not all, now have a date certain, and we're trying to get as many shots in people's arms as quickly as possible. But CDC says it's not a mandatory thing, and I follow that leadership.
Okay, so you'll be shocked that some of your Republican critics think that you're not moving fast enough on pushing schools to go in person.
They didn't criticize me when I let local school districts make the decisions by themselves when they're making decisions that they liked. Now local school districts are making decisions that they don't feel comfortable with, and so suddenly it's my problem. This is an issue that we all own, Republicans, and we're trying to get districts in a good place so that they can all open, and we're going to get shots in arms as much as possible. I cannot order schools to open. That's not part of my ability as governor. What I can do is get shots in arms and help them get the PPE in order to keep people safe. That's my job. So I know it's easy to sit back and criticize, but I found it interesting when they did criticize me that they didn't before when I was allowing local decision making. When that local decision making goes against their grain, then it's my problem.
Do you like the idea of a carrot and stick approach they're suggesting, that schools that go in person get more money?
Well, that's no, it costs money to do it virtually. It costs money to do it in person. And on top of it, they're asking me to use CARES money, federal money that we have already allocated to the University of Wisconsin system so that they can increase their testing so that they can get more kids on campus. And so that whether that idea has validity or not, and I don't think it has much, it's out of the question.
Okay, so you're the former state school superintendent, and you've lived your life in education and teaching kids. So this has been a setback for kids everywhere, whether they're in person, hybrid, or whatever. And so how? I guess what in your mind, as an educator, what in your mind is the best way to help all the kids? Is it summer school? Is it longer school days when we can go back in session? What is it?
Well, yes, there's no question in my mind that regardless of the way this pandemic played out in schools, that there's going to be a learning loss, and I'm hopeful that school districts will have very robust summer school sessions. If I had a magic wand, that would be one that I would, if I was back in the school district, that's what I'd be looking at right now is to, it's going to be hard to require parents to send their kids there, but I think parents know, and I've talked to enough of them that there is some learning loss, and whatever we can do around summer school, make it as robust as possible. A lot of times, summer school is a time for schools to look at maybe something different, something that they wouldn't have normally have in the school year. So I'm hopeful for that, but it will mean that we're going to have some opportunity, some real obligations to catch kids up, and whether that's summer school or making sure that next year we start, maybe even start early. We have to look at all options, and I know school districts are already considering some of those ideas.
Well, the state has a law that says you can't, well, you can get an opt-out, you can get a waiver, but it says you can't start school until September 1. So you might have to change that, right?
We might have to change that temporarily, and that might just work out just fine. We already have some exemptions, and hopefully that we'll be able to work that out. But at the end of the day, we really do need school districts to consider what we can do to catch kids up. I mean, there's just no question that there was a learning loss, and I'm not blaming anybody for this. This is a pandemic where we had 6,000 people die in the state of Wisconsin, more than that. And so it's just one of the byproducts of that, and we have to face it and make sure that our kids get caught up.
Okay, well, you being the former state school superintendent, there happens to be a race in about a month to choose somebody, to take that office for 4 years. Your appointed person, Carolyn Stanford Taylor, decided not to run. So it's going to be between Jill Underly and Deborah Kerr. Underly's a current superintendent in Pecatonica, and Kerr is a former superintendent in Brown Deer. So you must know these two, right?
Yes, I do. I know both of them. In fact, I knew most of the folks that were in the primary. Some of them have worked for me in the past. I have not weighed in on this race at this time. I'm hopeful that we have a huge turnout. Now that's going to be a heavy lift for all of us. Frankly, there's no Supreme Court race. There's just not much on the election front. But I'm encouraging people that there's all sorts of information out there. People can make that decision. I have not weighed in on this race yet. I don't know if I will, but I'm really encouraging. This is an important position. How our schools function is directly related to the voters making these decisions. So there's lots of information out there. There will be, I'm sure, all sorts of dialogues and debates on that. And let's get people out to vote. It's really important.
Okay, so a lot of your Democratic colleagues have already weighed in for Underly. So she seems to be the Democratic candidate.
Well, according to the folks that have weighed in, yes. But as I said before, it's a nonpartisan race. And at this point, I am not going to, I haven't decided to weigh in or not.
Okay, so you talk about turnout. Well, last year was, this past year has all been about debate about election turnout too, and voting rules. And you proposed some things in your budget. In fact, automatic registration, I think, is one of the biggies there at the Department of Transportation. Republicans have been criticizing the Wisconsin Elections Commission for the way it's interpreting laws and filling in the gaps. So my first question is, do you have confidence in the Wisconsin Elections Commission?
Of course I do. And those things that now the Republicans have problems with, decisions that the Election Commission made to implement the laws that the Republicans passed, those ideas didn't come out of thin air. They came from the Republicans that were on the commission. for, from the legislature. So yeah, I have confidence in them. They're all good people. Obviously, there's a possibility that votes will be 3-3 because there's Democrats and Republicans on there. But yeah, it's a system that works. There's no question in any of the court battles that happened that things happened incorrectly here in Wisconsin, and people were just following the procedures that were laid out 10 elections ago when Scott Walker was governor and the Republicans were in the legislature. All those decisions were fine back then. Now that we have a Democrat that's in the governor's office and a Democratic winner this last time, suddenly that's a problem. I don't think it's a problem. I think the election went well here in Wisconsin, and unfortunately, it took a dozen court cases to validate that.
Okay, so you proposed your changes here. Again, one of them, I think the biggest one being automatic voter registration and more of open records on redistricting process. But I guess let's face it, the Republican legislature has its own ideas, and they're probably not going to approve your stuff, and you're probably not going to approve their stuff.
That could be the outcome, but I find it difficult, and I know this is a political statement, but I find it difficult for any politician, no matter if they're Republican or Democrat. It would be against really, getting the opportunity to vote for as many people as possible, and having automatic voter registration is one of those ways, and so I just find it difficult to believe. But given what seems to be obvious, your conclusion might be correct. But I'll always advocate for making it easier to vote and getting more people voting. That's good for our democracy, and I think that's where we should be. Apparently, some of the Republicans feel opposite, but it's one of the few things we disagree on.
Okay, well, let's get into that. You've already signed two big bipartisan bills. They weren't quite what you proposed. Republicans revamped them with some Democratic support, and then you signed them. Are you trying to send a signal of some sort, well, what's the message? What's the overarching message there?
Well, that sometimes they have to compromise to get something done, and I know the Republicans know that as well as Democrats know that. And so, yes, when we can find common ground, and when that common ground will include some compromise on both sides, then we can get things done. And that has happened. I'll use the last budget as an example. They threw out everything, right? But at the end of the day, we had significant increases in funding for our roads, funding for our schools, and funding for our healthcare. That, in essence, that wasn't a compromise where everybody sat down and knocked their heads against the wall trying to figure out what a compromise can be. But I could have vetoed the entire budget. That was a compromise on my part not to, because they did provide, at the end of the day, some significant increases in the areas that I think are important. So I just want people to understand that even though we might not be celebrating together a compromise at every turn, the fact of the matter is it does happen, and it will continue to happen. What my concern is going forward is as it relates to redistricting in the state of Wisconsin. We cannot have the same thing happen that happened 10 years ago, where it was done in secret, where people had to sign documents saying they weren't not going to talk about it, and it happened outside the Capitol in secret. First of all, that's all baloney. And second of all, our state's a purple state. And the legislature is almost 2-1 in both houses, and there's Democrats who are at the state level governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, treasurer, and so on. So here that's not reflective of the legislative is not reflective of what our state is. And so we will, the next chance for us to collaborate will be around not only the budget, but also the maps that are going to be drawn by the legislature. And we'll see how that plays out. But that is a concern for me. It's a concern for the people of Wisconsin. I think it's about a 80% on or 70% on most polling is fair maps.
Okay, so you're holding out the hope that there could be a redistricting bill that you could sign.
I'm hopeful, but it hasn't happened much lately, and I'm prepared to go to court or whatever it takes. But it would be great to have a compromise on this, but it would mean some significant changes. We're a purple state. We're not red. We're not blue. We are purple. And I recognize that. I won by 30,000 votes, and the other candidates at the state level about the same numbers. And so I'm looking forward to making that happen. But I also, in the meantime, I want to make sure that the legislature does it in the most open way possible.
Okay, cool. Now we're going to get into audience questions, and a lot of them are on the budget. To set the stage for that, the Republican joint finance leaders have already pretty much declared some of your major proposals dead on arrival. Maybe that isn't a surprise. Is it a surprise to you? And that sounds like a repeat of what happened last time.
Yeah, it is a repeat of what happened last time. And I think that's not necessarily good news for the people of Wisconsin. When Scott Walker was governor, somehow these things that they felt that weren't fiscal went through anyway, and had at least a hearing. Some of the, first of all, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. Republicans and Democrats want great schools. They want clean water. They want broadband. They want money for small businesses. They want to make sure that we have venture capital systems in place so that we can not only recover from the pandemic, but actually move our state forward. And that's a major part of my budget is those things that I think people care about. And, the other things that they find repugnant, such as fair maps and marijuana and Badger Care expansion and minimum wage. All those things didn't come right out of my head. We spent time talking to people across the state. We had listening sessions where people talked about the importance of fair maps. They talked about the expansion so that we can have recreational marijuana in the state. They talked about these things, and so and those things are all polling way over 50%, and some of them significantly higher. So how is that not, they called it a wish list or something. Well, if it is, it's a wish list for the people of Wisconsin. And so I find it not surprising, but I find it odd that things that I know they care about, right? Who the hell doesn't want more broadband in this state? There can't be a single legislator who doesn't want that. The people of Wisconsin sure the heck do. And so,
well, they did signal that they like that part of your plan.
Well, okay. Did they signal that they want good schools? Did they signal?
Well, they did signal. They did say maybe not 1.6 billion, but we in the past they said they had increased education money, and so they signaled that would be, but probably not at the 2/3 level.
Well, but Robin Voss and his Blue Ribbon Committee that just 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, said 2/3 we should have it. So I put that out there. And now apparently he doesn't want that. But I'll just say this, Jeff. I know everybody's doing their job, and politicians are politicians. And there's always going to be this hubbub of what goes on in the budget world. And so I don't get bent out of shape about it. That we will get a budget, we'll get it done. It'll be somewhat of a compromise, but at the end of the day, for them to be in a conniption about sending $200 million into small businesses, they took the brunt of the economic decline in this state. Why shouldn't we provide that? Venture capital, they've wanted that for years. And so it's a good budget. Let's let the process work out. Hold your darn hearings. Let people come and talk to you about what's in the budget. Make some decisions, and let's move on.
Okay, so here's some specific questions from audience members. I'll sift through them, and then maybe I'll combine some of them that are alike. Here's a question. If the Republicans won't agree to legalize or decriminalize marijuana, do you think we at least can get medical marijuana in Wisconsin through a separate bill, perhaps?
Well, yes, we could, and I see no reason why we can't get it through the budget. But first of all, the issue of medical marijuana and medicinal marijuana, or recreational and medicinal, are things that people in Wisconsin talk about a lot. Then they vote in lots of referendum around the state. I want both of them considered, but I also know that there were some Republicans who supported medicinal marijuana last time, and if we can get that done, let's get it done in the budget. There's no reason why we can't do it in the budget.
Okay, another question here. What will it take to get the Republicans to support taking the national Medicaid expansion money?
Well, that is the millions of dollars question, because that's what is costing the state of Wisconsin. And frankly, I look at it in a couple different ways. Taking Badger Care expansion, Medicaid expansion, will absolutely save lives because we can reinvest that money into, say, well baby programs or well mom programs or mental health programs that are evidence-based and will save lives. Additionally, it obviously is a money saver, and it will. And from what I saw of the present conversation going on in Washington, D.C., it's even going to be a bigger money saver. And so for taxpayers of Wisconsin to continue to fund Medicaid expansion in Illinois, in Michigan, and in Minnesota, that doesn't make any sense to me. I think that money should come to the state of Wisconsin, and we can reinvest it in good ways to make people healthy. In addition, we'd be able to cover 90,000 people more in the state of Wisconsin. So it's all good things. Obviously, Speaker Voss has made it his goal to never expand Medicaid because he thinks it's welfare, and that frankly is erroneous. And there's lots of red states that have implemented it with even people more conservative than Republican leadership in Wisconsin. So they've got all sorts of people out there across the country that were in their position, and they said bring it to our state.
Okay, here's another question. Your budget takes a lot from our financial reserves. What is your plan, if any, to rebuild this cushion?
Well, the general budget ending point is at the highest level it's been in the last 10 budgets. So it's not like it's going to be in a significant decline going forward, because we're in a better place than we have the 10 budgets, including my budget last time. So I think we're in good shape coming out of this budget, and obviously with the pandemic being still an issue, but we're going to be in a better position going forward with the pandemic, that our economy, with the help of the things that we put in our budget to recover, especially small businesses, broadband, venture capital, making sure that our schools are in a good position. All those things are going to help us get to a better place. But as far as the surplus, we are in a better place now than the last 10 budgets that we've had in this, or second place in the last 10 budgets that we've done in this state.
Well, this is an aside from me. That has to be a pleasant surprise that during, the middle of last year, you had to think, oh, this isn't, the budget's going to be a wreck.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
here you end the year at with a big surplus.
Yeah, and we did our job as far as cutting in our state programming too. There's no question we've lapsed over $300 million as I remember. But the good news is that yes, our state did not suffer as much as other states. And I'll try to convince people of this. When we did the essential businesses in the state, we were easily the most liberal state as far as we had construction workers working through the pandemic because we knew that those workers and the people that they worked for were going to keep them safe, and we felt that guarantee was good, and so we kept a lot of our economy going when other states didn't, and I think that helped us keep a good balance in our budget.
Now, you've talked a little bit about, while we're on this topic, mentioned here a couple of times about your small business proposals and your venture capital proposals. And then part of the CARES Act money went to small businesses too. But still the failure rate on these small businesses is huge, probably, especially in the hospitality industry, maybe 30%.
Right.
I mean, is there anything the government can do for those folks?
Yeah, I do. I think even those that have closed and maybe haven't, they may still have a rental agreement on their stores. I do believe that $200 million will make a significant difference. I do believe that the recovery plan that the federal government is putting together, focusing on small businesses, I think we can make them whole. I don't know about that, but I think we can get them in a much better place to move forward. Obviously, our hospitality arena has struggled mightily, but I think we can bring some of those businesses back. But most importantly, the ones that are just hanging on by their fingernails, we will get them back.
Okay, now you proposed, here's a question about minimum wage, and you mentioned the Biden stimulus plan now in the Senate, and the Senate parliamentarian has said that the $15 an hour federal minimum wage has to come out of the bill. Mm-hmm. But this question comes from one of the attendees here. Why did your office decide to set a $10.15 minimum wage rate for 2024 when $15 is broadly popular and was just passed by a majority of voters in the state of Florida?
Yeah, and if we had that sort of system and like they do in Florida, I think we could have gotten $15 an hour also.
You mean a referendum system?
I'm sorry. Yes, a referendum system like Florida. But the fact of the matter is, we wanted to make sure that we had a chance at doing it. As simple as that. And if it took a few steps, that's what it would take. And so we did it in a thoughtful way. I know some people thought that $15 would be the best starting point, and we just decided to give the legislature some breathing room on this and move it forward in a way that is going to help some people. That's where we should start. If the legislature decides to go to 15 right away, I'm with them.
Well, they don't seem to want to hike the minimum wage at all, from what I gather. So, do you have an alternative? If the feds don't do it and the legislature doesn't send you something in the budget to do it, what can you do? Can you do anything on that?
No. This has to be a change in state law, and my ability to do that is zero. And so we need legislature to act on it. Hopefully they will. It is something that at the end of the day is going to continue to hurt our economy in the state. I know that people say, well, if we go to 15, we're going to have to close these businesses and so on. The the data doesn't support that very well. And the bottom line is living on $15 an hour is a very difficult living period. And we should be there. I'd be disappointed if we can't get something done. If it can't be done here, hopefully it'll be done at the federal level.
Okay, so here's a question from an audience member. When will you start closing prisons? Now, I think that's not in relation to the juvenile justice. I think that's a criminal reform question.
Yeah.
That's how I'm taking it.
Yeah, and we have the smallest number of people in our care and in our correctional institutions since 1999 right now. So we have dramatically decreased it. We have some things in our budget around juvenile justice, but we also have some things that will help make sure that our prison population continues to decrease at a rapid rate. That includes doubling the amount of money. I think it's doubling. It might even be more in diversion programs, so that people that enter have some issues with legal issues of breaking some law, that they have, instead of incarceration being the first choice, that we can get them in either drug treatment or alcohol and drug treatment, or different courts, treatment and diversion programs. We're dramatically increasing that in our state, and we need to continue to do that. In addition, we're working on the tail end of the care of the correctional institution. And when people get out on paper and they're under supervision, that we dramatically decrease the number of people that are sent back to prison because they violated some part of their parole, but they did not commit another crime. We're trying very hard administratively, and we're making some changes in this budget to make sure that that doesn't happen. A good share of our people that are presently incarcerated, far too big of a group, are people that are sent back for not breaking the law, for not showing up for a meeting with their parole agent or something like that. So we're working in both cases, and we under this budget, we're going to establish a sentencing commission that will look at sentencing in the state of Wisconsin. Obviously, when the present sentencing system was putting in place, it was all about tougher on crime, making sure that we incarcerate people as long as we can. No one believes that that's the right place to go, Republicans and Democrats. We did have a nonpartisan group, or bipartisan group, working on some of this before this budget, and unfortunately the Republicans walked away from that, and we're putting together what we had tentatively agreed to or talked about in this budget. It's important. This is something that's costly to the state of Wisconsin, and more importantly, it's unfair. The system is unfair. We have to make sure that people that are in prison, they're there for a very serious reason. We need to find ways to make sure that those that should not be incarcerated, that can be helped beforehand, are taken care of, making sure that people that are in prison get the programming they need so that they're not returning to prison. And we're working with the University of Wisconsin system on that, and making sure that people that are on paper, that are on parole and probation and under supervision, aren't sent back for things that aren't a crime. All those things together will dramatically decrease the number of people in our system and close prisons.
You can actually envision the day when an adult prison is closed?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely, yes.
What's taking so long, though, on the youth prisons? Because that's, boy, we're now into year probably 4 or 5 on closing the juvenile prisons in northern Wisconsin.
Yeah, and I haven't changed my belief on that at all. I was on that committee that created Act 185, and so I'm still there. We are going to close those prisons as soon as we can. What we have done, though, because the Republicans refused to allocate the money that was in last budget to move this forward, we've spent time saying, okay, what's a plan B here? And we talked to not only people that want to reform the justice system, the juvenile justice system, but also those that are part of it, and lots of legislators we've talked to, and we decided to make it an even better solution, and that is to have kids staying as close to home as possible, and transforming the system with smaller community-based models that frankly lots of other states have tried with great success. So we used the time to because that money wasn't allocated, to say, well, we can't wait around for this, and so we're moving forward with a different program that I think is evidence-based in a way that the other program was not.
Okay, so I'm sorry if I lost the narrative on this, but so there was a bipartisan working group with legislators and the administration on implementing the old juvenile justice plan, and then something went wrong, and then that's how you came up with the new plan?
Well, basically, we're talking about justice system reform in general,
Oh, okay.
and obviously juvenile justice was part of that, and it fell apart. I mean, Tommy Thompson was part of it, and a couple of Republicans and a couple of Democrats, myself, and we had good discussions, and people that cared about making some systemic changes were there and talking, and all of a sudden the Republicans disappeared, and we decided, well, let's get out and talk to people across the state of Wisconsin, and that's how we came up with what we've got right now.
So if I were to sum up, or maybe so you should sum up, what is the overriding theory of this, that if you're a nonviolent offender, you shouldn't be locked up? Is that the theory, or
well, that's a good place to start. I mean, the number of pardons I've had, and pardons are relatively easy because people have already gone through the system, served their time if they had any, and coming out of probation and supervision. And the number of people that we have that are that some of them actually served time, but all of them, were put on probation and have a felony for the smallest amount of marijuana you could imagine. So that's just a small thing, and there's other areas too where people have done something very minor, and this is my experience on the pardon board, and it's just like, really, these people ended up in prison for this. So I can't tell you, there might be some exceptions to the rule of nonviolence, but and not going to prison. But the fact of the matter is, I know we can do better, and I know we can catch people and give them a better life before they get incarcerated, and I know we can do a better job preparing them to leave incarceration and when they and re-enter society and going back into the system. I know we can do a better job on all that.
Okay, so I guess I want to end with talking about the economy. Again, the bounce back in terms of the economy is good, but there's been a lot of people where the rebound, they missed the rebound.
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering, what's the biggest economic development challenge going forward? Is it for these low wage workers? Is it for the tech industry, expanding that at a rapid rate to keep pace with other states? Rural economy, what is the biggest economic development challenge you face?
Well, if I had to say one of any of them, it would be broadband. I mean, that's something we can solve. But I've taken the opportunity to look at some of our surrounding states and what they're looking to as far as bouncing back and moving their states forward. And almost every one of them talks about making sure we have a good quality of life and making sure we're investing in our higher education. And that goes to your technology piece. And so we have to connect the dots, Jeff, and it can't just be, small business, money for small business recovery. Absolutely. Money for broadband so that our rural parts of our state can those entrepreneurs can have have, they can do this in Hurley as well, outside of Hurley, as they can in downtown Madison. We need all those things to be in place, in addition to investing in the University of Wisconsin system. So for me to sit here and say which of those are more important, and of course, the venture capital, that is obviously very important. But the one that is the most obvious to me is broadband, the most obvious, because it impacts all those other things that I just talked about. But it is about connecting the dots.
Yeah, it also would help with education. I mean, kids shouldn't have to gather in the McDonald's parking lot to, figure out
Amen.
their schooling for the day.
And I know we can do better. It's obviously going to be difficult. It's obviously going to be very expensive, but we did it with electricity. We can do it with broadband.
Okay. All right. Well, that brings us to the end, Governor. I want to thank you very much. Really appreciate you taking the time. Enjoyed the conversation, and you're welcome back at any time. I want to thank our sponsors, of course, for this Madison Club series: Hush Blackwell, American Family Insurance, Walmart, Xcel Energy, ARP Wisconsin, and the Wisconsin Hospital Association. And we'll be back this Thursday with the Democratic legislative leaders. So please sign up if you haven't. And until then, this is Jeff Mayer signing off. And thank you, Governor.
Thanks, Jeff. Have a great one.